Once more, Porsche was in the position of needing a new low price point sports car, but had no money to develop and produce one. The 2+2 Porsche 924, which lasted until 1988, was a good base with its front water-cooled engine and rear transaxle, so Porsche executives decided to evolve the 924 into the 1982 Porsche 944, also called the 944 Lux in some markets. The Porsche 944 was basically a 924, but it took a lot of cues from the 924 Carrera GT with its muscular flared fenders drawn by Anatole Lapin over Arm Legaye's 924 original design. This time, the rear flares were part of the fenders, while the engine was a real Porsche unit and not a Volkswagen Audi motor. This time, to make things even more official, the 944 would be built by Porsche and not Volkswagen. The design was stunning. The flared fenders really made the 944 into a sports car dripping with character. It looked mean and transformed the car into a real Porsche, especially with the optional blacked-out Fuchs wheel set. Beside the wide shoulders, the two-part front bumper had an optional pair of driving lights and fog lights set on the front valance. The rear valance had a lower lip, which helped to plant the 944 to the ground, and at the back, the hatch rear window base still had a large wraparound rubber black spoiler from the 924, but it looked better on the more muscular 944. In North America, two rectangular rubber overriders were installed on the front and rear bumpers, ruining the design a bit. But the four long side markers on each fender were a definite improvement over the 924's big round units. The engine chosen was still a 4-cylinder, but this time the engine was created from a split 928 V8. The result was a 2.5-liter or 151 cubic inch single-cam inline-4 Porsche engine. To reduce unwanted vibrations, usually caused by a large 4-cylinder engine, the Porsche 944 used two counter-rotating balance shafts to smooth the big 4 out. With 163 horsepower at 5,800 rpm in European trim and 143 horsepower at 5,500 rpm in US, the Porsche 944 was capable of 8.1 seconds, 8.3 in US, to get to 60 miles per hour, and the top speed was now 137 miles per hour or 220 km per hour. In February 1985, model 85.5, the Porsche 44 was now distancing itself even more from the 924 by changing its 3-sunken dial dashboard design by a beautifully enveloping oval layout. 4 dials were encased into an oval binnacle, and the imposing center console gave the 944 a sense of quality. The rear seats were just here for children, but the backrest could be lowered to transform the rear seats into a practical parcel shelf, while the rear window acted as a hatch for easy rear access. The other big news for 1985 was the introduction of the 944 Turbo with the use of the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder. The chassis was revised with stiffened up suspension and beefier brakes, with the optional ABS in 1987, then standard in 1988. The power was now 220 horsepower at 5,800 rpm, giving 6.3 seconds to 60 miles per hour with a top speed of 152 miles per hour or 245 km per hour. For the 944 Turbo, a new one-piece front bumper a la 928 housing turning signals and fog lights looked very sharp, giving a more solid appearance to the 944, while the rear 944 marking was simply changed to Turbo. In 1986, the more powerful 944S entered the arena. The engine was the same, but now the 16-valve twin-cam heads gave 190 horsepower at 6,000 rpm. The 944S was promising on paper, but the lack of torque gave a new 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 6.9 seconds and 142 miles per hour or 228 km per hour in top speed. For the 944S, the cookie cutter wheels got replaced by the telephone dial wheel set. And in 1988, the Porsche 944 Turbo Cup in Europe, or Silver Rose in USA, was supposedly offered as a limited model of only 1,000 cars to celebrate the success of its 944 Turbo Cup racing program. But by late 1988, every 944 Turbo received the Turbo Cup specs, simply naming the new turbo the Turbo S, or Turbo SE in UK. With a bigger turbo, the new Turbo S produced 250 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, with 258 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM. This newfound power rocketed the 944 Turbo S to 60 miles per hour in 5.7 seconds, while the top speed was 161 miles per hour or 261 km per hour. To stop the 944 Turbo S, the 928 S4 ABS braking disc system was used, and the suspensions were again stiffened and used Koni adjustable dampers. The steering and grip from those fat rear 245 tires allowed the last 944 to run neck to neck with the current 911 of the time, the 964. This confirmed Porsche's ability to mature a model like no other. In 1988, the base 944 now had 160 horsepower no matter which continent you bought yours from, and a year later, in 1989, the engine got enlarged to 2.7 liter or 164 cubic inch. The power only rose to 165 horsepower at 5,800 RPM, but the torque went up, making it more tractable. This engine ended up to be available in Europe for 1 year only. In 1989, Porsche introduced what many consider the best 944 of all, the Porsche 944 S2. The 944 S2 wasn't the most powerful with 211 PS or 208 horsepower at 5,800 RPM, but with a 3-liter 182 cubic inch twin-cam engine, it was the most tractable 944 with 80% of its torque available under 2,000 RPM. With a total of 206 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM, the 944 S2 acted like a small V8 with immediate responses from low revs, while still being very economical. Not to forget that it had the Turbo S looks along with its braking system, which again came from the 928 S4. Good for 149 miles per hour or 240 km per hour and a 0 to 60 time in 6.9 seconds, the S2 was in the big boy category, and it felt like it. Its suspensions were stiffened up from a 944S, but many still found it too soft. So, if desired, you could get the optional braking setup found on the 944 Turbo S. A cabriolet version of the 944 S2 finally appeared in 1989, after a long wait. Although, after much debate, the chopping job was finally given to ASC, an American company based in Germany, who succeeded to strengthen considerably the open car by only adding 7 kilos or 154 pounds. This made the 944 S2 Cabriolet one of the first convertible sports car to almost feel like its coupe brother in terms of body rigidity. It also looked great while doing it with its a la Speedster lower windshield of 6 cm or 2.4 inches. Also, the small sporty soft top had a Speedster look to it, accentuated by the flat rear trunk deck. In 1990, the 944 received a rear wing on the coupe as later on seen on the 968. It also marked the end of the Porsche 944 in the US, and a year later, in 1991, for the rest of the world. The last year, in 1991, the German brand produced a limited number of 625 Porsche 944 Turbo Cabriolet, based on the Turbo S, but only available in Europe. Also, that same year, Porsche UK offered the Porsche 944 SE, which was a well-equipped 944 S2 with sport suspensions and 225 horsepower from its 3-liter 4-cylinder engine. The beautiful Porsche 944 was a fantastic success for Porsche. Practical, relaxed, and easy at the limit with its nearly 50-50 even front-to-rear weight distribution, it allowed for Porsche to get out of the red financially speaking and proved that Porsche could make something else than a 911.